This is Paul Nobles from eattoperform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford. April, if you want to say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody.
So what is the reason? Are all your tank tops dirty today, or what's the deal?
No, I actually did not work out today, surprisingly. I made today an impromptu rest day because I spent 9.5 hours painting yesterday, so my hands were kind of seized up. And my mother called me last minute and tried to lure me to go to Raleigh to go shopping. So a woman can't resist shopping, so I said, sure, why not?
I suppose that's true. So what you're saying is basically you like pump up before you come to the workout, so you look all jacked.
No, no, no. I work out in the morning, like early morning. So, the jackness is I like
That's
to
just normal.
kind of hang around.
You just live jacked, right? Okay, so I did already tell everybody, we need to get questions going, things of this nature. Let's see, a couple things. For anybody who's in the Eat to Perform Open, we have added two sponsors and actually a third that nobody knows. Only you guys will know this, or the people that see this later on. But we just added Killcliff, and we added Two Poot Apparel. And then the thing that I'm going to announce tomorrow that I'll announce to you guys right now is that we also added virus compression. And so if you're participating in the Eat to Perform Open, you've got additional prizes that are going to become. And there's really not that many people in the Open this time, so if everybody kind of gets us their information, you're almost guaranteed to get like really cool stuff. I mean, like the Reebok stuff, that's like $300 gift cards. Killcliff is like a case of Killcliff. Two Poot has like a $50 gift card, and then Virus International is a $75 gift card. So a lot of really cool stuff. It's going to be about 7,500 in prizes, and I think there's only something less than 200 people actually even competing. So it's kind of a cool deal. Let's see. We do have one question. I'm going to go. Let's see. All right, so Steve's asking a question about protein. I'm going to get into that in just a second, but I want to talk real quickly about my cut being over, because I think that there was a couple interesting things that kind of came out of that. One of the things I talked about a lot was if you missed your number, and you were going for 8 weeks, as an example, and your number was going to be 170, and at the end of 8 weeks you're at 171 and a half, just stop at 171 and a half. It's not that big of a deal, right? So here's the opposite. I was 6 weeks into an 8-week, and April was asking me, she's like, wow, you really lost a lot of weight in a short period of time, and it was actually about a 10-day period. And the reason was relatively simple. I was traveling, and one of the things that we talk a lot about on these webinars is when you're cutting, one of the easiest ways to cut and get to a deficit is on the days that you're not working out. So if you want to go for a deeper deficit, it makes sense that you wouldn't work out. So I was traveling, didn't have the ability to work out a lot. Now I could have gone out of my way to work out, but once again, I was kind of in cutting mode, and so I said, okay, I'm going to take, I think like I had one day, one stretch that was 3 days and another stretch that was 4 days where I didn't work out. And so that was over about a 2-week period. So about half of the days I didn't work out. And so when I came home from San Diego recently, I woke up. The next day I was 169.8. The number I was going to hit is 170. And so I stopped. Now you go, well, what are you eating like now? Guess what? I'm not eating like crazy. I didn't like immediately go out. That's the problem that most people have. That's the thing that most people are doing wrong when they cut, is they immediately start to eat all the things that they were depriving themselves of the whole time, right? And so, of course, I was eating less, and so the point now is just to start to up my work capacity again. Obviously, haven't worked out, half of the days in the last 2 weeks, and so that I think it was Saturday morning I came back, and I was, like I said, 169.8, but I was a little hungry, and actually I think I had oatmeal with protein that morning, and then uh, I ended up working out, but I was still a little hungry, and we didn't work out till like noon, and I wasn't 100% like in my workouts. I didn't feel as strong as I normally would, and things like that. There was sort of the residual of the week coming up where I was eating at a little bit of a deficit or deeper deficit, and so now like my DOMS. I don't usually get super sore, but my delayed onset muscle soreness is definitely more acute because obviously I was a little bit more drained than I normally would be. And so last couple days I've been at 172, and it looks like that's sort of the number that I'm hanging out at is 172. This is it's only been 2 days, but today is Monday, and Monday is a day that I don't work out, and so this is kind of a control day for me. I'm sure most people know what that means. It's just basically like a lower carbohydrate, lower calorie day, and I'm not necessarily trying to stay under 170. Because it's not realistic. I would still have to kind of be dieting. I would almost have to get to like 168, 167, and then allow for a little bit of rehydration and things like that. I'm not overly concerned about that. I'd like to be able to stay though around kind of this 172, 173 number. That way, I know I could get to 169. Not super obsessive about it, in case you guys aren't hearing that. But long story short, I was able to complete my goal. I was able to complete it in a shorter time period, and I'm just really excited to get back to the gym and work out because, what I think most people like to do is they like to work out a lot and, see results. And the simple fact of the matter is, I was that same guy, right? I was like 4 weeks in, and I tried to keep my workouts up, and I was seeing results. I saw a lot of results early on, then started to slow, and then I was like, you know what? I'm traveling anyway. I might as well go ahead and just, suck it up, have a couple days where I don't work out, and it basically ended up being like a 2 to 3 week period where I was working out less and just really focusing more on seeing a result. And I think that's one of the problems is that people want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to work out all the time, and they want to be able to cut. And it's like, you'd be so much better off if, I think, for instance, if we're looking at an 8-week period, which is what I was looking at, you want to go as long as you can seeing results. So if you can go from, let's say 178 all the way to 170, working out and then kind of hitting a deficit, great. But if you sort of stall out at 175, 174, that's kind of where I was at, right? With 4 weeks left, it's probably better off that you put that fat loss as sort of the priority for the next 4 weeks. But what people tend to do is they tend to focus so much on trying to keep their workouts up, and then their calories, and then their calories start getting lower and lower and lower, and their stress starts to go. My sleep was not great, early on. I was able to adjust. I ended up taking some melatonin. I talked a little bit about that, but that was for a short period of time. I do take melatonin when I travel though, so I was taking it a fair amount when I was traveling. But when I came home, towards the end there, you know, I was able to sleep 8, 9 hours. I was able to adjust to it, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And but no, I'm not. I'm not like, you know, going out and having cheesecake and this type of stuff, you know. But I am trying to add more food. You know, tomorrow will be my first day with Vitargo. You know, as you know, I usually use Vitargo around my workouts and things of that nature. I haven't had Vitargo in probably 6 weeks. You know, so there's these little changes that you guys are hearing, you know, that you should have carbohydrates and all this other type of stuff. But when you're cutting, you know, from a higher number, you know, we obviously talk about that a lot. But when you're cutting, you know, some of the things like Vitargo go away a little bit, or you know, some of the smoothies coconut milk smoothies, we were, instead of having the 350 calorie version, we would have the 200 calorie version. Sadly, my wife she hasn't finished hers yet, but she's real close, and she's been seeing really good results. And it's been a real learning process for her. Obviously, this is something that I'm pretty good at, you know, to be completely honest with you guys. It's something I've done over and over again, and only, you know, in the last 5, 6 years have I learned to do it the correct way. And but I'm really excited because really this 170 number, you know, I'm at 13% body fat. I'm feeling great. The answer, you know, the question people are going to ask is like, well, how do you go from 13 to 9? And the answer isn't going to be go lower. You know, the answer is going to be build muscle, because I'm not leaving. One thing I learned from going down to 150 pounds in the past, you know, which was, you know, like 5 years ago at this point, is that I don't like to be that small, you know, and so for me to get from 13 to say 9 or 8, it just means that I have to build 8 to 10 pounds of muscle. Sounds like a hard job. Well, it probably is a hard job, and it'll probably take a while, but I've got time, you know. But I don't foresee a scenario where I will want to go under 170 just because I don't like being that small. You know, it makes, you know, people don't realize that the value of how, you know, how big you are, you know, makes a real big difference on the weights that you lift. And so, you know, you get down to 150 pounds and you can't lift shit, you know. And so so that I'm really excited about it. I'm actually writing 2 articles right now to just some tips and tricks that I did, you know, along the way that were sort of helpful. You know, one of the things that I actually thought was really super helpful was a suggestion that you made, April, was like ranch dressing with balsamic. You know, I ended up eating that a lot. You know,
you have to maximize. You have to maximize what you have. Like what you said, you cut out the Vitargo and, you know, the smoothies. You have to maximize. You can't, you know, still continue to eat those big calorie bombs and stay satiated with it. You know, it's funny. There was a question in the forum, or not a question. There was a post in the forum, and it was from a long-term member who's been around since the very beginning. And she asked, she saw on Facebook that she had reached her goal early, and she was like, you know, how does he do it? You know, how did he do it? And of course I chimed in. We all, you know, commented, and I chimed in and I said, you know, he basically stayed consistent. He followed his plan, you know, and he got it done. You know, that's what it's all about. And of course, you know, she commented that she finds her weekends hard and this and that, and, you know, and basically, you know, if you just stay on track, you know, stick to your plan, don't get tempted by, you know, the cupcakes or the alcoholic beverages or whatever on the weekends, and it's just an ends to a mean. It's your goal. You work at it, reach your goal, and then you're done, you know. And I do agree with what you said. I see it a lot with what you were saying. You reach your goal. I see so many people who reach their goal, and then it's kind of like, woohoo, you know, I did it. Let me go eat a big giant pile of pancakes and, you know, a big piece of chocolate cake and fried chicken and whatever else, you know, like the day of.
Or they'll reach their goal, and then they're like, well, I got here in 6 weeks, I might as well keep going. Like, why? Why? What's the point? You know?
Exactly. And the other point that you made, I think, was very, very important, how in the very beginning you kept your training up, and after a month, you were good in the beginning, which, naturally our body's gonna, it's gonna go along with what you give it initially, but then after a month it started stressing out, and you basically, your sleep started getting, affected by it. And then once you drop the training down, your weight pretty much kind of stalled. And then once you reduced a little bit of the stress from the training, that's when your body kind of started cooperating again, rather than going the route of, let me keep my training up and let me drop my calories even lower and make a larger stressful, atmosphere on my body.
There's a couple things that you mentioned that I think is really super important. Everyone says, I can't do it because of the weekends, or I can't do it because of, whatever, right? I was traveling, and I've been traveling for the last 2 months, and April said it best, like a lot of times when you're traveling, it's actually an opportunity to eat a little bit less, because one, you don't really know what's in these foods. It's not like a comfortable thing. Like if I have the option to eat a shitty meal at a restaurant that I don't really know what they're putting in the food, or just have a salad with some grilled chicken or something like that, I'll just pick the salad and grilled chicken, because frankly the reward for eating the mystery food isn't that big of a deal. Usually if I'm near my home, I know the foods that I like, I know the restaurants that I go to and things of that nature, so there's a comfort there. The other thing that is really super important that I think a lot of people dismiss is you're going to be hungry, right? So if you're going to be hungry, I think you're better off being hungry in the morning. And the reason why I think you're better off being a little, I don't even think it's hungry. I think that you're just in the habit of eating normally. And so I choose to be hungry in the morning and sort of delay my meals. And so what I did was just sort of have smaller meals. Like usually I would have oatmeal and protein, and then I might have a protein bar, and then have a bigger meal at night. And that was sort of a little bit of my pattern, and usually that kind of hit me around about 1,500 calories. There wasn't a ton of days like that, but towards the end there sure were, right? And then one of the great things that I started to figure out that I was doing wrong was I was sort of ignoring some of the Metflex stuff, and I got a little serious about kind of using the low-ish carbohydrates on the days that I wasn't working out, and I started seeing some good results from that type of stuff. I didn't take carbs out completely, as you already know, because that's not something that I do, but I was a little bit more aggressive. I would, like I said, I would have the 2 smaller meals, and then I might have a 12-ounce ribeye with some sort of dessert. I like to feel full, when I go to bed, and it makes me sleep better, and I think it makes everybody sleep better. And but yeah, I mean, the reason why we're talking 8 to 10 weeks is because you can stick to that plan. If you say, I'm traveling, and so it always makes it difficult when I'm traveling, or on the weekends it makes it difficult, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I went into these scenarios and I was like, I'm doing it. I'm finishing this. When I was a month in and I was 174 pounds, like you said, you must have had kind of a bigger whoosh type of thing. And yeah, it kind of was. But I sort of sat there and I kept with the plan, right? And having, coming back from San Diego and seeing the scale down, I really didn't expect it to be down like it was, but I was sort of happy that it was, so I could be over. And then immediately, I didn't go eat cheesecake and drink beer, but the first thing I did was squats and deadlifts, big workouts. The next day, had a WOD. I'm really focusing on the work capacity part. And, like I said, tomorrow will be one of my bigger calorie days, allowing for a little. You have to understand that when you're kind of, in a deficit, like probably for the last couple weeks, you got to allow for a little fudge factor. It's sort of like when you first start Eat to Perform, it's okay to gain 2-3 pounds. It's the same idea, And so if I wanted to, I'm 172 this morning. If I wanted to, absolutely I could, eat a little bit less and get back to 170. But it's not the 170 that's important. It's really the body fat. And what's been nice is seeing 4 to 5% body fat show up on paper, and knowing that I did it the right way. Knowing that I didn't starve myself the whole time, that I stayed with my workouts as long as I could. But then when I saw, like, hey, look, it's really slowing down, I got to decide what's more important, finishing strong or these workouts. And I was like, you know what? Finishing strong is more important. And that's what, if you always give yourself, if you leave open the option for a plan B, that's your plan A. Plan B is stick to plan A every single time.
Well, and another thing to keep in mind is that you reduce your training, but it isn't forever. I think a lot of people stress about missing a workout or not being able to go 5 or 6 days. But after a couple of weeks, once you reach your goals, you can add it back in and start adding more food back in. It's not forever. There is an ends to a means to an end. Excuse me.
By the way, I was not inactive on those days. And when I was in San Diego, I was in San Diego for 5 days, and so we were near the beach, and so I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would go for a walk near the beach, have a cup of coffee, and walk back. So I was doing like walks. But what's funny is people think that they have to kill themselves, and if they don't kill themselves, then they're not working out. A 3 to 5 mile walk is working out, and so people need to realize that. And that was a big, big benefit. That was a big thing that really helped with those 3 to 5 mile walks on the days that I really wasn't eating a lot. One thing I will say, there was one day that I struggled sleeping in San Diego. I think it was like my 2nd or 3rd day there, and on that day I ate normal, right? Because sleep is more important than whatever goal this is. I still would have had 2 weeks after this. I just ended up cutting it short, and so right now, basically reverse dieting out of this, similar to what we tell you guys, 100 to 200 calories a week. I'm going to probably be adding 200 calories a week because, like I said, I'm going to really start pushing my work capacity. And so, anyway, we've talked about that long enough. We've got a few questions, and so I want to get into those. But I wanted to kind of talk through what my thinking was, and also that it was just not an option to fail. And what a lot of people don't know is I kind of sat at that 165 level for like 3 years before I moved up, to try and move up a weight class to get stronger, which I did, and now I've moved back a weight class. So it sort of depends on like what your goals are. I'm still happy about that, and I'm happy. I knew it would be relatively easy, and for the most part, I've only had 2 8-week periods, and I probably, unless I decide to go up again for some reason, I'm gonna be honest with you though, I don't think I'm gonna do that ever again. It was a good experience. I don't regret it, but I had someone say to me one time, she was like, honestly, I just don't like dieting, and so I'm not gonna go up to this weight class because I don't want to come back down. And now I kind of, I could always appreciate what she was saying, but I definitely appreciate it more, knowing, my experience in the last year and a half. So Steve's asking, what is the best type of protein that is purest? Okay. So there's a couple thoughts on this. Most people will point to something like hydrolyzed whey, PeptoPro, things of this nature. These are like real high-dollar proteins that are hydrolyzed. Well, what does it mean? It basically breaks the aminos down into more absorbable units, and so your body is able to absorb it easily. Progenics, they say, is Dymatize, ISO 100. They say is, but all those proteins aren't as good as PeptoPro, and then people go, well, PeptoPro tastes horrible, and yeah, it does. So usually the simple answer is the best proteins are really expensive, but they taste really badly. So you want to keep that in mind. So if your protein tastes really good and it's hydrolyzed, it's probably not as hydrolyzed as you would think, or as they might be advertising. I'm not saying that anybody's doing that, but I'm just saying it probably would have to really taste bad for it to be really good protein. The other thing that people will say is it grass-fed? The grass-fed thing, not that big of a deal because whey protein doesn't have a lot of fat in it, right? So you want to be more concerned about grass-fed when we're talking about fat, because the fat is where, like, the grains and the bad fats and the saturated fats and things of this nature that you would be more concerned with. Frankly, I think that's overblown, but I do not buy grass-fed whey as an example because I believe it to be more pure. I don't believe it's a vastly better product. That said, if you can afford it, it's not a bad product, and it might be marginally better, but I don't think it's that big of a difference to kind of recommend to people. So normally, I would say something like PeptoPro is best if you can find a flavor that works for you. And I have to say, like, I'm still finding, the right value of protein. I kind of started using the Dymatize ISO 100 on your recommendation, April.
Did you get the fudge brownie?
I didn't. No, I started with the cookies and cream and haven't had like a great experience. So
you gotta order the fudge brownie. The cookies and cream is not good. I recently got a tub of the fudge brownie and the birthday cake. And the birthday cake it's decent, but I'm not a big vanilla person. But the fudge brownie is really good. So
okay, the fudge brownie, that's coming. But then also, I heard birthday cake PeptoPro is good.
Ooh.
Mike recommended that. So, is that helpful, Steve? I mean, does that give you any insights on how protein breaks down? I mean, in general, you want to have hydrolyzed whey, PeptoPro. Well, it basically goes PeptoPro, hydrolyzed whey, grass-fed whey, and then isolate. And frankly, I don't think grass-fed whey and isolate is that big of a deal. So, let's see. Charles is saying, how do I be a part of the open competition? Well, the open competition, the registration ended on the 15th of February, but you could still do the workouts. You could still participate in, the atmosphere of it, but you wouldn't be able to be part of the competition. But in general, like we've done this with the Fat Loss Challenge too, where as long as you're, logging your workouts, trying to be consistent, posting videos, all the things that we're talking about, you would be eligible for prizes. You just wouldn't be eligible to win the competition, right? So the weekly prizes you would be eligible for. And to be completely honest with you, there's more value in the weekly prizes than the winning. We don't make these huge winning things, because really what we want is more engagement and more fun and things of that nature. And so, so I hope that helps. But we haven't really actually talked about that, but that's the way that the fat loss challenge is working, so it wouldn't be any different. So if you want to go ahead, start posting videos, things of that nature, just check the forums for the Eat to Perform challenge. We did actually just start a private group that you could join, and so it'll walk you through like how to make yourself eligible for the various weekly prizes. So I hope that helps. So Steve said yes, that helped. Jeff asked a question. Hey y'all, about sleep, carbs before bed seem to help with sleep. Yes, I probably agree with that. Any suggestions for when I wake up middle of the night and can't get back to sleep? Well, that was actually what happened to me, and early on, I didn't have any problem at all getting to sleep, but then I had problems staying asleep. There's two thoughts to that. Okay, one, it might just be your time to wake up. I'm going to tell you that one right there, that's kind of a big one. Okay, I think people overthink that way too much. Like sometimes you'll wake up 6 hours in, and it was just your time to wake up, right? And so if for instance you can get through the day and you're not overly tired and things of that nature. I mean, a lot of times if you have 6 hours sleep and then the next day you come back and you go to sleep, you'll sleep a little deeper the next day. Maybe you end up sleeping 8 hours. I think one of the things that I used to do and sort of led to sort of these insomnia type of behaviors was I would obsess over that kind of stuff, right? The other thing was, if it's a concern, a lot of people refer to melatonin as something that kind of helps you get to sleep. In my opinion, it allows deeper sleep, and so I'm guessing many of you are like me, where you're a little bit older, and so you probably do wake up and go to the bathroom during the night. If that's the case, then the deeper you're sleeping, the easier it is to get back to sleep. But if as an example, you're cutting or something of that nature, you're not eating a lot of food, some of those things are sort of what I was referring to earlier, and some of the things that you need to be looking out for. So that would be the biggest question I would ask somebody who's struggling sleeping is, are you eating an adequate amount of food? And if you are eating an adequate amount of food, maybe try something like melatonin, or really go see a sleep doctor. I mean, there's just nothing more important than sleep. I think I heard Rob Wolf say it one time, and he's like, sleep should be the easiest sell there is compared to sex. I mean, there should be sex and then sleep, and I 100% agree with that. I was underslept for many, many years, and once I started to make sleep a priority, everything just started to work, and that's kind of been a big thing. Any thoughts on that, April?
If it was a consistent thing, then I would just look at his overall total caloric intake, and he may be in a deficit and may need to increase his calories. Sometimes for me, I do still add the carbs before bed, and I sleep like a rock and don't even use the restroom, which I used to sleep lighter and would actually wake up to go to the restroom, but I don't do that anymore. Every blue moon, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, and this is kind of strange, but it works like a charm. I have a box of sea salt rice crackers that I will keep beside my bed, and I will eat 2 of them, and the salt with the carbs, it puts me right back to sleep immediately. I just eat 2 crackers, and literally within 5 minutes, I go right back to sleep.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. I've heard other people say, like, if you wake up and you're thinking and can't get back to sleep, that have a notepad next to the bed. I've never done that. I probably should have done it a long time ago, but I've never done that. But that is one of the things. Actually, that was one of the problems early on, right? Because early on you see the most success, and so I was really excited. I I was seeing these results, and I was able to work out, and I was having fun. And then, I would wake up, let's say 4:30 in the morning, and then, I couldn't get back to sleep because I wanted to weigh myself. I wanted to see like the progress that I was making, because things were sort of headed in the right direction. And so towards, like I said, 4 or 5 weeks in, it was just like, this is what it is. The plan is the plan. Whatever the scale says, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, I've got this plan in place, and it's going to take me where to go. And what's been interesting about it is that, it's been sort of a, I don't know, it's enlightening, with my wife going through it and walking her through the process, and the kind of that mental struggle of, wanting to, having an expectation related to, seeing the scale go down and things of that nature, and she's actually responded to that really well, and so that's been cool. So Edith is asking, hi Paul and April, you've mentioned a lot about limiting the amount of time that we're focused on fat loss. If we're doing okay with the current plan without struggling in performance, is it okay to continue? I asked because I'm interested in doing back-to-back challenges and was curious on your opinion. This is a great question, and I think the answer is yes. If you feel like you're still seeing results and it's going well for you, then great, continue on. Now, there's some caveats that I'll throw out there. One, is that helping your relationship with food? If you don't think that that's being compromised, then just go right ahead. Two, a lot of time, the deeper you go, the more you start to see that it's actually not fat loss. And so you'll start to compromise your muscle and things of that nature. And so if you're seeing results and you're not being that aggressive, then great. But if you need to get aggressive to see results and you're continuing on at that point, honestly, you're probably just pulling water out of your muscle and you're putting some tissue at risk. And so that's what I would be concerned about. But if for instance, your calories are normally 2,400 and you're kind of working in that 2,000 to 1,800 to 1,600 range, and you haven't really needed to change those numbers or get super, super aggressive, then I say stick with it. Can you think of any reasons why she shouldn't, April? Because I think that what happens for a lot of people is they sort of want to pull the Band-Aid off, and they don't want it to be 10 pounds, they want it to be 20 pounds and then 30 pounds, and all these extreme type measures. And so that's the big concerns that I would think about. And the other thing that I would look at too, Edith, if I was you, is if it starts to get hard, just stop. You've already gone far enough. You've gone way past. Actually, I did describe this like literally 10 minutes ago. I described the exact scenario that you're talking about. Normally, I would say for someone that you should stop. I think you would be better off to stop, because you want to increase your work capacity. What you're doing right now ultimately is decreasing your work capacity. But that said,
I think sorry to interrupt you. I think she's actually still.
Stop, please. 1 second. I just need to get this last part out. Sometimes when things are going in the right direction, let it go in the right direction. Don't get in the way. But when you start to stall, stop. That would be my answer. Okay, go April. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Sorry. No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I was going to say I am familiar with her, and I think she's still fairly new, within a couple of months into Eat to Perform, so she's still seeing great strength gains, and all that. Once, like what you said, once she starts stalling, once her performance starts, kind of tapering off, and because eventually it will catch up with you, then at that point I think she needs to take a break.
Yes. So be very aware, but when what do they say, when the sun is shining, make hay? That's what I think you should do. You know, if things are going in the right direction, just stick with the plan. You know, and you know, just remember that when things start to slow, the goal is going to be to just, you know, come out of it, add work capacity, and then really sort of get those calories up. You know, you don't want to be stuck at a 1,600 calorie point or 1,300 calorie point. It's unnecessary. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions, or let me know if you think that was a good answer. So Jessica is saying, this is my first time to enter any type of fat loss competition. I fall in the extreme fat loss category, 231 pound starting weight. What should I be doing this week to mentally prepare to fully commit to this type of challenge? By the way, Edith said, thanks to you both. Here's what I think would help you, Jessica, and I think that what happens for a lot of people, and I was very similar to you when I first started off, and I think the most important thing that you can do is just to start at it gradually. I think I might have mentioned it 2 weeks ago. I definitely mentioned it in one of my recent seminars. My brother-in-law, okay, I eat with my brother-in-law all the time. And normally I eat somewhere between 2,700 to 3,000 calories. So I know that my brother-in-law eats 4,000 to 4,500 calories because he eats more than me, right? I see it every single time I eat with him. And so so he's decided that he's going to lose weight, and so he's like, so what do you think of 1,400 being my calories? I said, I think that that's ridiculous, you know. But he does this, and we all do this, you know, or at least, you know, most people do it now with Eat to Perform. We're obviously having a conversation with people about not having too extreme. But I would still keep things that you enjoy in the mix. My guess is, even at 231 pounds, you probably weren't eating near as bad as you think. Like when you added up all the calories, right? It's probably not like this excessive amount of calories. Usually what ends up happening is people hold on to these, you know, these weight numbers because of, you know, slowing metabolism, not being able to, you know, have enough energy to work out and things of that nature. That's what happened to me so many times, and I actually have an article that's coming out hopefully tomorrow or today. Might even be out today. James was editing it. But what I talk about in that was, you know, gradually I went from kind of exercising to really severely dieting to there's no way I could exercise because, you know, I'm eating so little. And then that's what sort of started the ball rolling, you know, 7 years ago when you know, I started to come up with the ideas for Eat to Perform and researching and talking to PhD level people and really started getting into, you know, the basics of strength and conditioning. And so, you know, maybe you're not super into exercise at this point. Maybe you are, you know, I don't know. But what I would say is you don't want to go near as hard as you think. You definitely want to have more whole foods, you know, mostly meats and vegetables. But you don't want to take carbohydrates totally out of the mix. And you want to have things that you enjoy. The one thing that I made a big priority from 225 pounds all the way down to 150 to 170, where I am at now, I've had dessert every single night that whole time in all, you know, 7 years, because that is one of the things that makes me feel good going to bed, you know. And so whatever that is for you, keep those things, you know. Doesn't need to be, you know, obviously if those things is like a Big Mac value meal, you know, at 5 o'clock, you might want to rethink that one, you know. And there was things actually along the way, because I remember I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to give up my coffee and cream and there's no way that I'm giving up my bagel and cream cheese, right? That was my initial. I'm not giving those up. And then I started looking at it, and I was like, holy cow, this is like 800 calories that I'm just like wasting every single day. And that's when I learned that, that's probably not the best. And then, some of the desserts that I enjoy now don't look like the desserts that I was enjoying before. So you want to make gradual change. I think the more aggressive you are, the less likelihood you're going to see success. And so that would be my thoughts. The other thing that I will say before April says her piece is get in the forums, get to know everybody. Just deep dive in. Like I said, Plan B is to finish Plan A. Plan A is to get to where you're going to go. Do you mind telling me how old you are, Jessica? Okay, so you're 32. So by the time you're 60, they're going to figure out how to regenerate organs and all that other kind of stuff. You're going to be living to 150, 200 years old. You got a long, long time to figure this shit out, right? So don't stress out about trying to lose a whole bunch of weight right now. The way that you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so if you're 231 pounds right now, let's focus on getting under 230. Once you're under 230, let's focus on getting to 225. And we just gradually kind of stop it there. But one thing that I did that was a bit of a mistake, and I sort of learned from it, was as I was upping my work capacity, I kind of went at it way too hard, and I sort of wish that I hadn't. And I'm going to tell you something that is probably important, and I don't know if you're lifting weights or not, but I'm going to say to you that if you're 231 pounds right now, lifting weights is going to be better for you than running. And so I would keep that in mind. You probably want to have some level of cardio, but you don't want to be wearing out your joints and things like that, because what ended up happening for me is I ended up getting hurt and I ended up getting sick a lot. If I knew at that time that weightlifting was an option for me, I would have been much farther along, because the value of keeping that muscle and having muscle that's functioning well is going to really help you. And so I hope that makes sense. April, any thoughts on Jessica's, besides like totally welcoming her to the forum?
Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the forum. Come get in. There's just tons of help there. So you would be crazy not to utilize everything that's available for you. I cannot strongly agree enough with the gradual changes. I see it too often. If you're trying to gradually change your diet, and you're going from working out to 2 days a week, and you're like, oh, it's the fat loss challenge, I'm going to give it my all. Let me start training 5 days a week. I'm going to get really restrictive with my diet and make everything super clean, and I love chocolate, but I'm not eating it for 8 weeks, and you're going to fail. You're going to fail. I tell people all the time, let's start slowly working in making protein a priority and slowly making gradual changes and forming new habits. And after you form that habit, it basically becomes a habit, and then you start forming newer ones. And then eventually, after you start getting more comfortable with your diet, then you can increase your training up, and everything just starts kind of coming together rather than, just trying to change everything all at once.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is those little changes. All you gotta do right now, Google Paul Nobles Jr., right? And what you're gonna see is a bunch of pictures of me in various weights, because I used to be a professional poker player, and so all the pictures you'll see are from me, at poker tournaments all throughout the world at various weights, because I was always kind of yo-yo dieting, and I would get super aggressive, and the only thing that really ever worked was just kind of being more gradual about it, and I think that's going to end up benefiting you over time. But what April is saying is those small little changes that you make don't seem like a big deal, but now looking back, I'm a completely different person. Those small changes added up to a whole bunch of stuff that really made a big difference for me. And so you're with the right people, and we're gonna help you out. Just just kind of get, your head straight and dive in. And like I said, I mean, we're here for you, but you've got to make the effort on your part. And I think that it sounds like you're ready to do it, and that's awesome because we're excited about that. So Brandy is, so Jeff was saying, yes, melatonin helps, just don't want to get dependent resistant. Okay, I'm going to tell you something, Jeff. People used to tell me that shit, and it bugs me to this day that I listen to them. I use melatonin on occasion, okay? People use melatonin to combat jet lag, right? And what ends up happening is they'll combat the jet lag, they'll start sleeping better, and then the melatonin goes away because you're in kind of a normal sleeping pattern. And so there's no reason you need to become dependent on melatonin. But I would say that, and I did sort of see that towards the end there that the melatonin didn't seem to be as effective as it was early on. And so you can cycle off that stuff. And I would definitely recommend that you do so. But I would also be a little bit more cognizant of, am I doing a little more than I think I'm doing? Or am I eating a little less than I think I'm eating? Because I'm going to tell you, over and over and over again, when that's the problem for me, that's usually the issue. And that's usually the issue for a lot of folks that are having trouble sleeping. So, but we covered that, and we do have a few questions, and we're sort of getting towards the end here. Brandy saying, hi, Paul and April. New to E2P, having trouble understanding, bring carbs back into my diet, especially in the morning. I work out in the evening, and with trying to eat my carbs around my workouts, I feel I need to avoid carbs in the morning. What would be a good morning breakfast? Well, I wouldn't say that you necessarily need to avoid carbs in the morning. And I would say that something like 30 grams of carbohydrate is probably going to be beneficial in the morning. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because one of the, I think most people are familiar with cortisol, and cortisol is kind of the hormone that wakes you up and things of this nature, and it can kind of linger around if we're not conscious of it. But one of the things that that is a natural combatant to cortisol is carbohydrates, and so one of the and protein, by the way, and so one of the changes that I've made is I used to eat mostly fats and proteins in the morning, and I've gone to having, like I said, about 30 grams for the reason that I just mentioned, because I want to have cortisol. Now sometimes I won't eat breakfast, like I actually mentioned early in the virtual workshop, that sometimes I'll actually delay breakfast till probably 10, 11 o'clock. Even waking up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. If I don't feel hungry, I don't necessarily eat. It just sort of depends. If I feel hungry, I eat. That's the long story short. If I feel hungry, I usually eat carbohydrates too. And so that's why I'm saying 30 grams of carbohydrates might surprise you. Like half a cup of oatmeal is about 30 grams of carbohydrate. And so that's still a significant amount of carbohydrate. When we're talking about carbohydrate, you're probably coming from kind of a restricted carbohydrate background. So 30 carbohydrates might sound like all the carbohydrates in the world, but when you're looking at the recommendations that we typically make for people in terms of starch and carbohydrates, for women it's almost always going to be close to 200. Maybe on a smaller female it might be slightly less, but usually it's going to be right around 200, and so it takes a lot of carbohydrates. So having something like 100, 125 in your evening meals and desserts, that'll go a long way. But 30 with your breakfast, maybe a little bit with your lunch, is not out of the question, and I would say that that's perfectly fine. Any thoughts in terms of 30 grams of carbohydrate suggestions, April?
That's actually generally what I usually do. I usually do 25, 35, something like that in my earlier meals. And even I'll usually do my pre-post workout meal, and then a couple hours later, kind of get that crash from the fast digesting carbs and the hydrolyzed whey, and kind of want to take a nap. I'll actually add some carbs in there, and it picks me right back up till dinner. So it works well for me. If she's coming from a low carb background, obviously, and we talk about this all the time, she needs to gradually work those in. She tries to eat 200 grams or more carbs, the first day, she's going to be extremely overwhelmed. She's going to be very full, and, she's going to want to give up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, well, and then, the other part that other people, don't mention is the weight gain. If you gain, 2 or 3 pounds, I mean, usually with a low carbohydrate diet, you do kind of plateau and you don't totally get to where you wanted to go, but at least your weight's stable, right? Because, there's almost no water in your body because you're completely dehydrated. You haven't met your goals, but, at least your weight's stable. Well, when you start adding carbohydrates, your weight does move up. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is that your weight actually needs to move up. That's one of the signals that you're giving your body that, hey, all is good here, and so now we can go a little bit lower. And so that is one of the things that lean out a lot of people that are coming from a low carbohydrate background as they start to add the carbohydrates and kind of uptakes into the muscle and things of that nature. And so I wouldn't be overly worried about the carbs in the morning. Just kind of keep them lower. The other thing I would say is have a lot of protein. One of the things that I can tell every single person that I think is one of the biggest things you can do is I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 grams of protein in that morning meal almost every single day, because it sets you up to hit your numbers so much easier. If you start off the day and you have oatmeal with like dried fruit or something of that nature, guess what? You just wasted an opportunity to just put some, whey protein in your oatmeal. And, yogurt, Greek yogurt's another good one for protein. And you can add whey protein into your yogurt, though sometimes that gets a little too sweet and sort of hard to eat. But sort of depends on how you like sweet. So Leslie's saying, I'm starting out. I'm very excited. I lost 75 pounds over 2 years, and I'm looking to get tight and toned. I'm not used to eating to perform. I'm working out first thing in the morning. When should I be eating the majority of my carbs? I'm afraid of overdoing it and looking puffy. Everyone is afraid of overdoing it and looking puffy. I was afraid of overdoing it and looking puffy. And it's really, it's that fear that you have to get over, but we'll walk you through how you can not overdo it and get puffy. The long story short is you want to have starchy carbohydrates in your meals before your morning workouts. Now, when is your morning workout, though? Because if it's 10 a.m., then that would be a different prescription for some people than, say, 5 a.m. So are we talking about really super early? Because if it's really super early, yeah, you want to have your carbohydrates the night before. And she's not responding. Maybe she went to the bathroom. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's on Instagram.
Maybe she wanted to eat some carbs.
Yeah, she's like, screw these dudes. I'm going to get some ice cream. Which probably wouldn't be the best carb, by the way. You want to have mostly, I mean, it's a good carb to have because it tastes amazing. But it's got more fat than you would want. You'd probably want to go with something more like, sorbet or, something like that. In terms of overdoing it and looking puffy, okay, here's a couple tricks that we have sort of learned along the way. Is when you're first starting out, kind of coming from a restricted background, like as in your situation, um, you would want to keep the majority of your post-workout or your carbohydrates post-workout. In your case, having some carbs pre-workout the night before is going to be fine. Just make sure that you're not going like crazy with the carbohydrates post-workout as you start to adjust to adding carbohydrates. But you have to continuously try and up that number to get to where you want to be, because as you've read in Metabolic Flexibility, that's what allows your body to be more efficient. That way you're fat adapted and then carbohydrate adapted as well. And so now when you aren't working out, you want to go mostly kind of, what you probably were doing before, relatively low carbohydrate. But what was happening for a lot of people is they were working out a lot and they were low carbohydrate as well. What we're saying is if you're working out, let's try and have a moderate amount of carbohydrates in the beginning, start to gradually move that up, and then on your rest days, those are the days that you're going to want to take away. So let's say that you were at 200 grams of carbohydrate eventually, maybe even 300 grams of carbohydrates. Some good athletes get up that high. If you were at, let's just say 250. So if you're at 250, you take away 100 grams, that's 400 calories, and you have mostly fats and proteins on that day. That's usually a way to get your calories down, usually a way to get your carbohydrates down on rest days, and that usually affects that puffy feeling really super well. So I hope that helps. She, I think, might have left, but Steve is saying my morning workout is at 4 at night. What carbs should I take prior to? 4 at night. My morning workout is at 4 at night. Totally
I assume that's 4 in the afternoon.
No, my morning workout is at 4. I think he's saying 4 a.m.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are you sleeping and then going to a 4 a.m. workout, Steve? I think he answered yes last time, but I don't know that he was answering yes to that question. He said, no, I work late nights. Okay, so there we go. No, I work late nights, so I go from work to, okay, you want to have your carbohydrates around 2 a.m., right? So you want to have your carbohydrates going into your workout. Maybe have a little carbohydrate post-workout. If you work late nights, then you're going to obviously sleep after that, and so the carbs will help you sleep a little bit better. Does that make sense, Steve? Okay, super. Well, it's 8:03, and we don't have any other questions, so we're going to skedaddle, but I appreciate everybody being here. You guys had great questions, and thankfully we didn't have any technical problems. So that will be the end of this virtual workshop, and we'll see you guys next week. Talk to you later. April, did you want to say goodbye?
Good night, everybody.
Oh.